For Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour to rise to respond to the Honourable Minister of Finance's presentation. I will note parenthetically that I've never seen a display as rude as the heckling of a Minister of Finance presenting a speech in this place. I wish that did not happen in this place because it brings disrepute on us all. And I disagreed with much of what the Minister of Finance was saying, but I think we owe respect to the officers of this place and to our executive in a government. We are here as members of Parliament to hold them to account, not to ridicule them as if we were in a schoolyard. I apologize for taking a moment to act like a schoolmarm, but I just couldn't help myself. Now, to the matter in front of us. What would be, I love my honourable colleague from Saskatoon Grasslands, but I'm just going to continue. I want to say how disappointed I am that in an opportunity to respond to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report that we must hold global average temperatures to 1.5 degrees, that document apparently didn't cross the Minister of Finance's desk. This is not an issue that can be pigeonholed, where the Cabinet can afford to say, let's let the Minister for Environment and Climate Change or the Minister of Natural Resources worry about whether our children are going to have a livable planet, because that's just one of those other issues that's less important than our finances. I put it to every member in this place, and particularly to the Prime Minister and his Cabinet, that no issue comes close to discussing whether this planet will be habitable for human beings in the lifetime of our children. That's a rather important issue, and it is completely ignored in this document. Let's look at what is discussed. If we were serious about making sure that we changed our plans so that Canada would not be held up, as it was recently in the scientific study earlier referenced in this place, that if every country on earth followed Canada's plans for climate, we wouldn't hold to 1.5 degrees. We're in the worst category there is. We'd be in with China and Russia taking this planet to 5.1 degrees, which is a level of danger that can only be described as an existential threat to the survival of humanity on this planet, which means it's important. Let me put it very clearly. Climate change is not an environmental issue. Climate change is a security threat that eclipses all the terrorists you could find on the planet all together, all the time. It is a security threat that should awaken in every responsible member in this House a determination to rise up and meet that challenge. As it does, I'm convinced, in Canadians from coast to coast, they want to be given tools. They want to know, what do we do? If we were to ask the Rotary clubs, the Lions clubs, the church groups, every volunteer organization in this country, tell us what you'd like to do. Do you want to start installing solar panels? We'll help you. Do you want to plant trees everywhere you can? We'll help you. Do you want your young people to know what they can do so they can make a difference, protect their own future? We're there for you. We need leadership. Now, if we were going to look at the advice we've had from serious studies of how we get to a place where we have security for our future, a planet that will sustain life, and not only sustain, but allow us to thrive. The kind of, we've had the benefit of a very hospitable planet ever since human beings first emerged as Homo sapiens and left our monkey cousins behind. We have had the benefit of a very beneficial climate. We're at risk of losing it for good. So what would we do if we wanted to put ourselves on that good path? Well, we know, because work's been done. The advice of the Deep Decarbonization Project, which I'll just refer to quickly, what we want to do, first of all, is get all fossil fuels out of electricity, decarbonize our electricity grid, improve our east-west electricity grid so that there was good connectivity for British Columbia to sell to Alberta, for Quebec to sell to all of the Maritimes, and so on. East-west grid needs work. Then we'd want to say, get all the fossil fuels out of it, make sure we're able to go off fossil electricity entirely. That doesn't mean Alberta's plan of going off coal to go to fracked natural gas. That doesn't do it. That's about the same amount of greenhouse gases. So we do all of that. Then we'd say we're getting rid of the internal combustion engine. Thank you very much. We're going to electric vehicles. Then we'd make sure that every single building in this country was retrofitted to the highest energy efficiency standards, which would employ, according to the trade unions I've talked to about this, 4 million Canadians, which means jobs for more workers than we actually have needing jobs. You take this apart, then you compare it to this document. So what do we have here on the priorities for removing barriers to trade within Canada? Nothing on the barriers to selling electricity. These are the 4 high-profile areas identified by this government in a time of climate crisis. These are the 4 areas where there will be an opportunity to improve internal conduct of trade. We're going to improve the transporting of goods in the trucking industry. We're going to harmonize food regulations. We're going to align regulations in the construction sector. I'm not against any of these things. But compared to the priority of an east-west electricity grid that works, and number 4, we're going to facilitate greater trade in alcohol between the provinces and territories across Canada. Where's the east-west electricity grid? Anywhere in this discussion. Where is there any awareness of what needs to be done, how it can stimulate our economy, how it creates jobs, and how it protects our future? So as I look to this document,
if you can hear my voice, please say shh. Very good. I just want to remind the honourable members that someone is speaking, and normally we try to listen when someone speaks. It's just parliamentary procedure. And it's nice to hear everybody getting along but in talking, but it's starting to get a little bit loud, and I'm having a hard time hearing the honourable member for Sandwich Gulf Islands. The honourable member for Sandwich Gulf Islands, please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that courtesy very much, and I appreciate the chance to speak directly to my friends in this place so they can hear me. So the east-west electricity grid is a very important part of putting together what we need to do to address the climate crisis. I sometimes compare this when I'm talking to groups in my riding and say, look, if you had a jigsaw puzzle on the table in front of you and you had all the pieces, but you'd lost the top of the box, it's very hard to solve the puzzle when you've lost the top of the box. But if you paint the top of the box, it looks like this. Get carbon fuels out of electricity, move our vehicle fleet to electric vehicles, do fuel switching for everything else, tractors, fishing boats, forest equipment, use biodiesel, make sure all our buildings are as energy efficient as possible, and stop exploring and developing any more fossil fuels than the level we have now, and use it domestically instead of trying to put it in pipelines to ship it to places that aren't interested. But instead, we do have a pipeline reference here in this document. Page 93 tells us what we already know, that we spent $4.5 billion on a 65-year-old pipeline. And it does refer to the idea that we may expand and build an additional one, but it doesn't put the price tag in here. If anyone wants to know the price tag for expanding the now owned by the Government of Canada Kinder Morgan pipeline, it's an additional $10 to $13 billion on top of the $4.5 billion we already spent for an existing pipeline. It's actually referred to in the following sentence, quote, should construction of the expansion project be permitted to recommence prior to the sale of Trans Mountain entities, the government will record the construction and associated expenditures as adding to the book value of the asset. But the opportunity cost of spending $10 to $13 billion on an expansion of that pipeline is extraordinary. And I would say that not only in this document, but in no document of the Government of Canada and no document of the prior owner, Kinder Morgan, will you find a cost-benefit analysis of what it really costs, just in economics, to build a pipeline to ship bitumen offshore. The reason the Alberta Federation of Labour and Unifor, the biggest union representing oil sands workers, intervened at the National Energy Board to oppose the Kinder Morgan pipeline is because it costs us jobs. And it doesn't diversify markets either. If anyone wants to track the real-life examples, where does the dilbit that reaches the Port of Burnaby now, where does it go? It mostly goes to California. It's not diversified markets, it's just moving our oil, bitumen, solid bitumen, not even crude. It's moving it to the same places it can go over land. So if we're serious about this, if we want to be serious about a climate crisis, which is real, and we want to respond to the needs of Canadian society, this is not the document you produce. We do have other critical issues in this country, and while the climate crisis is an existential threat, I really do agree so much with what the New Democrat Party response said, which was this would have been a good time to start getting pharmacare going, to give us that commitment, maybe the spring budget, but we need pharmacare in this country. And I also know, Jim, and the honourable member mentioned him earlier, that we have a veteran who sits outside by the bridge next to the Chateau Laurier and can't afford his medications without people stopping to give him money, because we are the only industrialized country. We are the only country with universal health care that doesn't provide universal pharmacare. And while we're at it, why are we not implementing Vanessa's law that was passed in the 41st Parliament to take Big Pharma to task and make them publish their drug results?
Yes.
There's a lot we need to do in this country. And this document doesn't say that we're committed to doing those things. There are many nice words in here. I'm not saying that they're not. I welcome any document that says it's time we take the charitable sector seriously, but there's nothing here about when we're going to pick up our own socks and live up to our commitments to make poverty history by increasing our overseas development assistance to 0.7% of our GNP. That's a commitment that was made years ago in this country, and we have made we're falling backwards compared to where we were under former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. That's the highest it ever was in terms of our charitable sector, with 0.45% in 1992. Well, Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up on this, I just want to emphasize again that no document prepared by the Government of Canada, I want to quote Jim McNeill, the late Jim McNeill, who wrote the Brundtland Report, a great Canadian, who said the single most important environmental document prepared by any government is its budget.
That's right.
This fall mini-budget fails entirely to respond to the single largest threat to our children's future, and let's hope that before we go to COP24 in Poland, we will see this government step up and say, we want to be the climate leaders we promised Canadians we would be. Thank you.